The rain at Port Garrison doesn't just fall, it attacks. It comes in sideways, smelling of salt and diesel, trying to find its way into the seams of the city. My shift at the harbor and hearth was supposed to end at 10. It's now pushing 10:30, and the rain is machine gunning the plate glass window of the café, turning the neon sign of the bar opposite into a blurry, bleeding watercolor of red and blue on the wet pavement. I was wiping down the espresso machine, the scent of burnt coffee grounds and steamed milk thick in the air. The café was mostly empty, just a couple of dock workers nursing beers in a corner booth, and him, Adrian Voss. He was a regular, but not the chatty kind. He came in 3, maybe 4 times a week, always after 9 p.m. Always sat in the same booth, the one in the back, a clear line of sight to the front door, but also only 3 steps from the kitchen swing door, which led to the fire exit in the alley. My old stage manager back at the community theater would have called it defensive staging. I knew who he was. You don't work the graveyard shift in Port Garrison without learning the hierarchy. The Voss family wasn't mafia, not in the old world sense. They were logistics. They owned the cold storage, the shipping manifests, and it was whispered, the silence of the port authorities. Adrian was the new head of that empire. He was young for it, maybe 30, and he didn't look the part. Tonight, he wore a simple gray wool coat. The collar turned up, it was damp from the rain. He looked more like a philosophy professor on sabbatical than a crime boss. He was reading a thin paperback, his dark hair falling over his forehead. The only thing that gave him away was his stillness. He didn't fidget, he didn't tap his foot. When he turned a page, the movement was economical, precise. His eyes, when he occasionally lifted them from the book to scan the room, were a flat, calm gray. He'd ordered his usual, a large black coffee, paper cup. He never used the ceramic mugs, always paper. I was dreaming of gel filters and follow spots. My application for the city's stage lighting apprenticeship was due in 2 weeks when my phone buzzed in my apron, a network alert. Harborfree_5G is now using channel 40. That was weird. I'd set up the cafe's router myself. It was locked to channel 6 to avoid interference from the dock's high-powered repeaters. Channel 40 was way up in the 5 gigahertz band, and our router was a cheap 2.4 gig model. A new network. Someone was broadcasting as us, spoofing our SSID. It was a tech trick, something we used to do in the theater to run secondary, private networks for the lighting and soundboards, piggybacking on the main house signal. It was a niche skill. It made the hairs on my arm stand up. I glanced at Adrian. He hadn't moved. The dock workers were laughing, oblivious. Then I heard it. Beneath the drumming rain and the hum of the coolers, there was another sound, a high-pitched, faint whine, like a mosquito, but electronic. It seemed to be coming from above, from the roof. We had skylights, thick, reinforced glass panels to let in the grim Port Garrison daylight. Now they were just black squares, slick with rain. Rotors, small ones. My heart didn't just speed up, it changed rhythm, like a lighting board getting a bad cue. I grabbed a damp cloth and walked out from behind the counter, pretending to wipe down the empty tables. It gave me a reason to move closer to Adrian's booth. "Need a refill on that coffee, Mr. Voss?" I asked. My voice was steady. Years of backstage crisis management, blown bulbs, missing props. Actors walking off meant my panic response was ice-cold calm. He looked up. His eyes didn't just meet mine, they scanned me. "No, thank you. Mina, I'm fine." He knew my name. I hadn't expected that. As I reached his table, I saw it. I almost dropped the rag. On the bottom of his paper cup, stuck near the rim, was a small sticker. It was a hollow triangle, maybe a 1/4 inch wide. It looked like a piece of reflective tape. But I knew what it was. In theater tech, we used IR infrared reflective tape to mark spots on the stage floor. They were invisible to the audience, but the infrared cameras wired to the automated follow spots could see them clear as day. The spots would lock onto that marker, tracking it perfectly. This was a targeting marker. The Wi-Fi spoof, the rotors on the roof, an IR marker on his cup. This wasn't a robbery. This was a hit, a high-tech one. They were using a drone, guided by the IR marker, and they'd probably spoofed the Wi-Fi to take control of the local network, maybe to feed them a camera signal or to arm the device. I had maybe 10 seconds. My brain was screaming. I looked at the counter. The only other thing to drink was the bottle of homemade ginger honey tea I'd made for my sore throat. It was in a dark green glass bottle, opaque. I moved. I walked right up to his table, my hand diving into my apron pocket and pulling out the bottle. "Actually," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, "the coffee's burnt. I wouldn't finish it." I placed my bottle directly on the table, sliding it across the wood so it physically blocked his view of the paper cup. His eyes snapped from my face to the bottle. He was confused, his stillness finally broken by a frown. "Drink this now," I whispered, my voice urgent, commanding. "Trust me." I didn't wait for him to answer. My other hand shot out and grabbed the paper cup. He started to react, his own hand moving. But I was faster. I'd already turned away, palming the cup like a stagehand clearing a prop. "Mina, what?" "Just trust me," I said over my shoulder, walking, not running back to the counter. I could feel his eyes burning into my back. He hadn't touched the tea. He was frozen, analyzing. He thought I was the threat. Behind the counter, I looked at the cup. The triangle gleamed under the track lighting. I needed to get rid of it, but not just throw it away. The drone was probably looking for this specific shape. If I just tossed it, it might track it to the trash. I needed to destroy the geometry. The ice blender. I ripped the sticker off the cup. It was tough. Vinyl. I dumped the rest of his coffee into the sink, shoved the sticker into the bottom of the heavy glass blender pitcher, and threw in a scoop of ice. I hit pulse. The noise was horrific, a grinding, shattering roar that made the dock workers jump, but it was perfect cover. The blades would shred the vinyl into unrecognizable fragments, and the ice and water would scramble any IR reflection. "Sorry," I called out, forcing a smile. "Blender's on the fritz." I looked back at Adrian, and he was on his feet. His hand was inside his gray coat. He was looking at me, then at the ceiling, then back at me. He was connecting the dots. My gaze drifted to the sugar caddy on his table. We used brown sugar cubes, but as I'd grabbed the cup, I'd seen something else in the bowl, something that didn't belong. A single, perfectly round bead, the size of a pea, coated in cinnamon and sugar, sitting among the lumpy brown cubes. My blood went colder. A silica bead, a desiccant packet. Maybe no, it was too perfect. I'd seen diagrams of these in tech magazines. A microsensor, a sniffer. It wouldn't be IR. It would be CO2, a proximity marker. They had a backup. The drone wasn't just looking for the cup. It was looking for the person breathing next to the cup. The sticker was the primary target. The bead was the confirmation. Adrian was scanning the room, his eyes finally landing on the skylight right above his booth. I saw it too. Just for a second, a dark, spidery shape against the rain-slicked glass. It wasn't a delivery drone. It was smaller, leaner. He still didn't know about the sugar bowl. He didn't know he was still marked. The drone outside descended, hovering just outside the main window. It looked like one of those new, high-speed delivery models. It zipped into view, its red and green lights flashing. It was aiming for the window, right at his booth. Adrian saw it and tensed, bracing for what bullets. The drone's front panel opened, a tiny metallic arm extended, a needle at its tip, gleaming, a micro-injection, something to make it look like a heart attack. Clean. There was no time to explain. I was next to the industrial bagel toaster, a big stainless steel beast with a pop-up lid. Just as the drone's needle arm touched the glass, I slammed my hand on the toaster's eject lever. The heavy, polished steel lid flew open with a loud clang. It was pure, dumb luck. A lighting designer's instinct? You don't fight the dark, you use the light. The polished steel lid, angled just right, caught the overhead lights and threw a blinding, geometric flash directly at the drone. It was like swatting a fly. The drone's optical sensor, blinded or confused by the sudden, unexpected reflection, spazzed, the needle arm jerked sideways. It fired. The needle, no thicker than an eyelash, missed Adrian's window completely. It shot past, burying itself in a full, 1-gallon plastic jug of cold milk sitting on the counter, waiting to be restocked. There was a hiss, a smell of burnt plastic and sour milk. The milk jug didn't just leak, it curdled instantly, turning into a solid, churning white mass from the chemical reaction. The smoke alarm above the counter shrieked to life, triggered by the chemical smoke. All hell broke loose. The alarm wailed, the dock workers yelled, scraping their chairs back. "Fire, get out!" one of them shouted. Through the chaos, Adrian was already moving, but he was moving toward the door, toward the line of fire. I launched myself from behind the counter, grabbing his arm. His muscles were like steel. "Not that way," I yelled over the alarm. I shoved my hand into the center of his chest, pushing him down, breaking his posture. Kitchen now. I didn't give him a choice. I kept my hand on his back, propelling him low and fast toward the swinging kitchen door, just like we'd practiced in fire drills. He was disoriented, but his instincts took over, and he moved with me. We burst through the doors into the stainless steel calm of the kitchen, the alarm muffled but still audible. "Drink this now, trust me." The words echoed in my head. It wasn't an antidote. I wasn't saving him from poison he'd already drunk. I was giving him a command, a password, a reason to break his routine and listen to me before the needle found him. We didn't stop. I dragged him past the walk-in, toward the alley exit. I glanced back through the porthole window of the kitchen door. The cafe was a mess of overturned chairs. The dock workers were fumbling with the front door. And outside, the drone was gone. It had vanished back into the storm. But something else was there. Across the street, parked in the shadows just outside the bleeding neon light, was a heavy-duty panel truck. Its headlights were off. Its engine was a low, idling rumble. Even through the rain and the dirty glass, I could see the logo painted on its side. It was faint, deliberately muted. A circle of fire, a perfect unbroken ring of flames. The Caldera Circle. I'd heard the name, a new player, not logistics, something different, something that used drones with needles and chemical weapons. I shoved Adrian out the back door into the alley. The rain hit us like a physical blow. "This way," I panted. He finally grabbed my arm, spinning me around. His gray eyes weren't calm anymore. They were a storm. "Who?" he demanded, his voice a low growl. "The hell are you?" He still had his hand on my arm, his grip like a steel clamp. The rain was cold, but his question was colder. "Who the hell are you?" The idling engine of the Caldera Circle truck was a low throb in the alley. They hadn't left. They were waiting, assessing. "I'm the person who just saved your life," I snapped, wrenching my arm free. "And we have maybe 30 seconds before they send people in to confirm the hit." I didn't run deeper into the alley. That led to the street. I spun and shoved the kitchen door open again, pulling him back inside. The alarm was still screaming, a painful, useless noise. "They're watching the exits," I yelled over the din. "Not the exits." He was confused, but he followed. The cafe was empty. Chairs overturned. I didn't go through the dining room. I dragged him past the steel prep tables, past the ovens, and yanked the heavy chrome handle of the walk-in refrigerator. A blast of cold, damp air, smelling of yeast and vegetables, hit us. "In here, move." "This is a cold room, Mina." "It's a shortcut." I cut him off. He balked for a half a second. I didn't have time for it. I shoved aside a hanging rack of cured sausages and hit the wall panel in the back. It wasn't drywall. It was insulated steel. My first week here, I dropped a box of butter and seen a maintenance worker use this. It was a utility hatch, built for the city crews to access the old harbor wall infrastructure. I twisted the latch. It wasn't locked. It opened with a gasp of pressurized air onto a pitch-black shaft, smelling of rust and the deep, cold salt of the harbor. An iron ladder descended into the void. "Go," I commanded. Now." He looked from the ladder back to me, the dim refrigerator light catching the rain glistening in his dark hair. "You first." "I'm right behind you. Turn around," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. "And walk." "That." He understood. He swung onto the ladder and disappeared. I followed, pulling the heavy hatch closed above us. The click of the latch was deafeningly final. We were plunged into absolute darkness. The only sound, the metallic thunk of our feet on the rungs and the roar of the storm outside. It felt like we descended 30 feet. My wet sneakers slipped, but I kept my grip. We dropped onto a concrete floor slick with grime. It wasn't a sewer, thank God. It was an old storm drain, wide as a car, built to handle the king tides. The wind howled through the tunnel, and I could hear the aggressive, chopping sound of the harbor ahead. We hunched and ran, water splashing around our ankles. The tunnel ended abruptly at the jetty, opening onto the black, violent water of the inner harbor. The rain was horizontal here. The wind nearly ripped the breath from my lungs. A shadow detached itself from the bulkhead of the pier. It was a man, large and broad-shouldered, and unlike us, he was almost perfectly dry. He moved with the same terrifying economy as Adrian. Zero wasted motion. He was waiting for us. "You're late, boss," the man said. His voice was like gravel rolling in the tide. He held out two heavy, oilskin raincoats. Adrian took them without a word, shoving one at me. It was heavy and smelled of canvas and engine oil. "Complications," Adrian said. He was looking at me as he said it. The new man's eyes settled on me. This must be Kane Rook. I'd seen him, maybe once or twice, sitting in a dark sedan across from the cafe, just watching. He wasn't just a bodyguard. He was a human scanner. His gaze wasn't curious. It was an assessment. He clocked my drenched cafe uniform, my flimsy apron, my shaking hands. He didn't ask who I was. He just filed me. Adrian's phone, some kind of rugged, heavy-duty model, buzzed. He pulled it from his coat, shielding the screen from the rain. His face, already grim, tightened into a mask. "Diuek," he said to Kane. He didn't have to raise his voice. The wind carried the word. "They're scheduling a food safety inspection at Warehouse 17, sunrise." Kane checked his watch. "That's 4 hours from now." "It's a raid," Adrian said. "Caldera is coordinating this. They missed me, so they're hitting the warehouse." Kane gestured with his chin toward a low, black inflatable boat tied to a rusted ladder, bobbing violently in the water. "We go now." "Mina," Adrian said, turning to me. The storm was screaming around us, but his voice cut right through it. "I'm taking you somewhere safe, a safe house. You'll be protected until I handle this." I finished zipping the heavy coat. The warmth was already seeping back into my skin. I looked at the dark water, then at the two men, hiding, being stashed like a piece of evidence. My future, my application, my dreams of the theater, all of it felt like it was dissolving in the rain. "I'm not going to a safe house," I said, my voice surprising me with its strength. "I'm not hiding. You're going to tell me what that triangle sticker was, the one on your cup." Kane actually stopped what he was doing. Adrian's eyes narrowed. He was genuinely confused. "Why?" "Because," I said, my teeth chattering from the cold and the adrenaline. "I think I know where it came from." The wind died for a second, leaving a pocket of terrifying silence. "This morning," I rushed on, "our manager was complaining we got a new supplier for our dry goods, a company called Garrison Provisions. I was restocking the sugar caddies right before my shift. The shipping box, the brown sugar, came in. It had that same hollow triangle printed on the label. I didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was a new logo." Adrian and Kane looked at each other. It was a look that said more than an hour of conversation. This wasn't just a witness he'd found. I was a link. "It's a targeting system," Adrian said flatly. The professor was gone. This was the boss. Caldera Circle. They're testing new tech. They want to hit us without a trace. He gestured back toward the cafe, now invisible in the dark. They're using retrofitted commercial drones, untraceable. The IR tag guides the drone. The sensor in the sugar bowl confirms the target by reading the carbon dioxide from their breath. No noise, no witnesses, just an aneurysm at a coffee shop. "Why you?" I asked, pulling the hood of the raincoat up. He looked out at the churning black water. "My family runs logistics. We move cargo. We ensure contracts are honored. We keep the port stable, but we have rules. My father had them. I have them. No narcotics, no human trafficking. 0%. Caldera doesn't have those rules," Kane added, his voice low as he unclipped the rope on the boat. "They want to move their product through my port," Adrian continued, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I said no, so they're pushing me. They want me to get messy. They want me to start a street war, so the feds come in and break us both up, and they can pick up the pieces. Or they just take me off the board." A piece clicked. "The drones," I said. "How did they even get them in the harbor's restricted airspace?" "The Maritime Security Directorate," Kane said, not looking up. "The MSD is supposed to police the drone lanes. Someone high up must be on Caldera's payroll, signing the permits. They're masking them as emergency supply deliveries." "Warehouse 17, Adrian said to Kane, his decision made. "We go now. We have to clear it before the DUC arrives." "What about her?" Kane asked, nodding at me. "She comes. She's the only one who's seen the supply chain side of this." My heart hammered. I wasn't being shoved in a safe house. I was being brought in. As Kane steadied the boat, I fumbled with the clip on my apron. Still tied around my waist under the coat, I pulled off my keyring. I isolated the small, cheap wooden key, the one to the cafe's dry goods pantry, and the employee lockers. I held it out to Kane. "When this is over," I said, my voice small, "can you make sure my boss, Mr. Henderson, gets this back? I left the walk-in hatch open and the register." It was a stupid, mundane thing to say. We were running for our lives, and I was worried about the inventory. But it changed the air. Adrian stopped, 1 foot in the boat, and looked at me. Kane paused, then took the key from my hand. His rough fingers brushed my palm. I wasn't a player. I wasn't an angle. I wasn't trying to extort them. I was a waitress. Kane nodded once, a sharp, quick gesture. "I'll handle it." He helped me into the R-hib. It was solid, the floor rigid. Adrian sat across from me. Kane took the tiller, and with a low, powerful electric hum, the boat peeled away from the jetty and shot into the darkness. We didn't use the main channel. Kane steered us into a network of narrow, black service canals that ran between the massive, silent warehouses, a concrete canyon hidden from the city. The rain was a solid wall of white noise, and the engine was barely a whisper. We were a ghost moving through a graveyard of steel. We were sitting close, huddled against the spray. Adrian had to lean in to be heard over the motor. "Mina?" I looked up. His face was just planes and shadows. "I'm sorry," he said. The words sounded foreign in his mouth, like they cost him something, "that you were pulled into this." I thought about my lighting apprenticeship, a world of colored gels and focused beams that suddenly seemed a million miles away. I thought about the smell of burnt milk and the pft of that needle. "You didn't pull me in." "Adrian," I said, my voice firm, meeting his gaze. "I saw the setup. I recognized the tech. I stepped in myself." His gray eyes held mine for a beat too long. A nonverbal signal passed between us. Respect. Maybe. The boat slowed, the hum dropping. A massive corrugated steel wall loomed out of the rain. Warehouse 17. It was enormous, big as a football field, and dark. Kane cut the engine, and we drifted toward a submerged loading bay. Kane pulled a handheld device from his coat, a thermal imager. He raised it, scanning the building, the perimeter fence, the roof line. He froze. "Adrian," Kane said. His voice was flat, deadly. He handed the imager to Adrian. Adrian raised it to his eye. I leaned over, ignoring the space between us, and looked at the small, glowing green screen. The warehouse was cold, blue-black. The rain was cold. But near the front gate, maybe 100 yards away, were 3, 4, 5 bright, glowing white shapes, human-shaped. They were moving, fanning out. They weren't waiting for sunrise. "They're early," Adrian whispered, lowering the scope. "The DUC team, the fake ones, they're here. They're going in now." Kane didn't hesitate. He killed the boat's motor, letting the storm's momentum drift us into the submerged loading bay. It was a black rectangle cut into the concrete foundation of the warehouse, invisible from the water or the air. As we slid under the steel lip of the building, a heavy gate descended behind us with a muffled thump, sealing out the sound of the rain. We were in a cavernous, dark pen, the water lapping against a concrete dock. Kane tied off the boat and jumped out, his boots hitting the ground with a wet slap. Adrian was out a second later, turning and offering me his hand. I ignored it and climbed out myself. His hand stayed in the air for a second, then dropped. "This way," Kane said, hitting a panel. A steel door slid open, not into a warehouse floor stacked with pallets, but into a brightly lit, glass-walled room. It looked like a cross between a stock market trading floor and a military command center. People were moving fast. This was the real Warehouse 17. 2 people broke from the cluster of monitors as we entered, dripping. The man was young, maybe my age, thin, with a shock of black hair and eyes that were scanning a dozen data streams at once. He was vibrating with nervous energy. The woman was his opposite. She was perhaps 40, impeccably dressed in a dark blazer, her blonde hair pulled into a severe, perfect knot. Her smile was bright, sharp, and didn't reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile that calculated your value before you'd even said hello. "They're on the perimeters," the man said, shoving a tablet at Adrian. "Priam, go!" "I told you they were early," Priam Holt said, his voice high-pitched. 5 signatures, moving west. They've cut the electronic lock on the front gate. They're sweeping the yard. "Who," the woman said, her voice like chilled vodka, "is this?" She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Adrian. "This is Mina Paloma," Adrian said, pulling off the dripping raincoat. "She's the reason I'm not dead on a cafe floor." The woman this had to be Delia Marr finally turned her gaze on me. Her smile remained, but it was a trap. "Is she now? Or is she the reason they found you? The reason they're 4 hours early and at our gate?" "Delia," Adrian said, his voice low and warning. "I'm serious, Adrian," she countered, stepping forward. "You walk into a low-security location. A high-tech team just happens to be waiting, and you walk out with a brand-new friend. The timing is too good." I felt my spine straighten. I was cold, wet, and running on pure adrenaline, but I wasn't going to be cross-examined by a woman in a blazer. Before I could speak, Kane stepped between us. He was a mountain, and his shadow fell over Delia. "She's clean," Kane said. His voice was flat, final. Delia's smile faltered. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," Kane said. "I ran her. Mina Paloma, 24 years old, no record, works 40 hours a week at the hearth, applying for a stage lighting apprenticeship. When she fled the cafe, she left her purse. She secured the walk-in, and her last act was to try and lock the register. On her way out, she gave me the pantry key to return to her boss. She's not an operative. Delia, she's a civilian who's consistent. She saw a threat and reacted." Delia held his gaze, then backed off, her smile returning, this time with a thin veneer of apology. "My apologies, Mina. In our business, consistency is a liability. It gets you killed. We prefer angles." "The DUC team isn't the only problem," Priam interrupted, tapping his screen. "I'm picking up the drone again. Same frequency as the one that spoofed the harbor and hearth Wi-Fi. It's on the roof." My blood went cold. "They're trying again." "They're looking for Adrian," Delia said. "They'll scan the whole building." "Then we need to blind them," I said. "All 3 of them, Adrian, Delia." Priam looked at me. "In the theater," I said, my voice gaining strength as I stepped into my own expertise. "You don't fight a follow spot. You overwhelm it. You use a light wall. We can do the same thing. That drone is looking for a heat signature. It's using infrared." "So we go cold?" Priam asked. "We're in a cold storage facility." "No," I said. "You go hot. Too hot. You create so much IR noise that it can't distinguish one person from the background. You make the whole roof look like the surface of the sun. Adrian's eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but in focus. What kind of lighting do you have in the main warehouse? Standard fluorescence, Kane said. Useless, I said. We need high-pressure sodium lamps, the old, ugly orange streetlights. Their spectrum is incredibly noisy. And we need reflectors. What do you use for insulation? We have 100-foot rolls of industrial-grade aluminum foil, Adrian said, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Get them, I said. We need to cover the skylights. We'll rig the sodium lamps to blast the foil. It'll create a field of thermal chaos to their sensors. This building will be a solid block of blinding white light. Delia looked skeptical. And you know how to do this? I know how to rig a full stage grid in under an hour, I said. This is just bigger. Adrian didn't hesitate. Kane, get her anything she needs. Priam, you're with her. Delia, you're with me. We watch the DUC team. He just handed me the keys to his defense. It was a test. I'm on it, Priam said, already pulling up schematics. While you're at it, I said, turning to Priam, you said you found the drone's signal. Yeah, it's strong. They're arrogant. Can you hack it back? You said you could reverse the handshake. I can try, he said, fingers flying. I can force it to return to its origin point, make it think the mission failed. Good, I said. When you send it back, send it with a gift. You must have environmental tracing dye here, the kind that stains concrete. Priam looked up, a slow, wolfish grin spreading across his face. Oh, I like you. A biodye payload. We mark the nest. We worked fast. Kane's men were efficient, moving like a well-oiled machine, unrolling massive sheets of foil and securing them over the interior skylights. Priam and I, meanwhile, were hot-wiring a bank of ugly, powerful sodium lamps, aiming them straight up. I ended up in the Central Command office with Adrian and Delia, my hands on the power board, coordinating with Kane's men over a radio. Priam was locked onto his console, fighting his invisible war. The office was small, overlooking the vast, dark warehouse floor. The only light came from the green glow of the monitors and the flicker of the sodium lamps as they warmed up, bathing the room in an unsettling, flickering amber. I could feel Adrian next to me. He wasn't watching the perimeter cams. He was watching me. You're not afraid, he stated. It wasn't a question. I'm terrified, I said, not looking at him. But fear is just energy. It's what you do with it. Right now, I'm focusing the beam. The amber light softened the hard lines of his face, the tension in his shoulders. He looked less like a boss and more like the man in the cafe, the one reading a paperback in a wool coat. You're right about this, he said, his voice quiet. This chaos, this isn't what I want. Caldera, they need this. They feed on it. I want to take the Voss network and make it clean. A legitimate cold chain. Connect these warehouses to farms, to grocers, build something. Stability, I whispered, remembering Kane's word. Caldera wants to keep the old prophets, the ones that come from the dark. Got it, Priam suddenly yelled, making us both jump. The hack is in, and oh, wow, I didn't just get the drone. Adrian, I got the source code for the guidance system. I got the architect. He turned one of the monitors toward us. It was a data file, a developer's signature. Seraphine Dambro? The name meant nothing to me, but in this room, it was a bomb. Delia let out a string of curses, sharp and precise. Kane, who had just entered, went absolutely still. And Adrian looked like he'd been punched. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. He just stared at the name, and all the color drained from his face. Who is Seraphine Dambro? I asked. She's a ghost, Delia said, her voice tight with a new, cold fury. She was an advisor to Adrian's father, a strategist, a family friend. She helped build this place. We all thought she'd retired, moved to Europe. She's the brain Caldera hired, Adrian said. His voice was hollow. She's the one doing this. It's worse than that, Kane said, his eyes on Adrian. Boss. I know what it is. Kane. Adrian snapped. He looked at me, his eyes now a flat, empty gray. When I was 15, I was on the docks. A container crane failed. A rigging chain snapped. I was trapped under a steel beam. He unconsciously touched a faint scar near his hairline I'd never noticed before. The dock workers ran. The whole gantry was coming down, but she didn't run. Seraphine, she got a hydraulic jack, crawled under the wreckage and got me out, just before the whole thing collapsed. I owe her my life. Adrian, I said, my heart sinking, you can't fight her. Not if you're still carrying that debt. An alarm blared. Priam pointed to a new screen. Perimeter breach. The DUC team is at loading bay 3. They're through the door. Adrian was still frozen, his mind a million miles away, back under that steel beam. Kane, tactical, Delia ordered. No, I shouted, grabbing the radio. Wait, don't engage. Expose them. Priam, give me the external floods for Bay 3, all of them. Priam's fingers flew. You have them! I looked at the monitor. The fake DUC team. 5 of them were entering the bay. They were in full tactical gear. Helmets with face shields and cameras mounted. They looked professional. They looked lethal. They're recording, I said. Standard procedure. But those helmet cams can't handle a sudden, high-lumen blast. They have an auto-glare protocol. It forces a reset. I slammed my hand down on the main switchboard. Outside, a dozen 2,000-watt floodlights hit the team simultaneously. It was like a flash grenade. The monitor went white. We heard them yelling over the audio feed. Gah, my eyes, what the hell? Sensors are blown, I can't see. On the monitor, the image struggled to resolve. The men were fumbling, blinded. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man, ripped his helmet off, snarling in frustration, and looked directly up at the security camera. Kane zoomed in, his voice filled with a grim satisfaction. Gotcha, that's Jax Red, a freelance cleaner, supposedly lost at sea after a job in Miami went sideways. They were exposed. Their faces were on our system. Their cover was blown. Jax Red saw the camera, understood the trap, and signaled his men. They weren't here to fight an army. They were here for a quiet sweep. They backed out. Fast. Adrian finally moved. He stepped to the intercom, his voice shaking with repressed fury, booming out over the loading bay. Inspector Red, you seem to be off your jurisdiction, and 4 hours early. Red paused at the door, gave the camera a single, hateful look, and was gone. Adrian switched off the mic. The silence in the room was heavy. They'll be back, Delia said. Maybe, Priam said. But we have their faces. We can leak this. The DUC will have to investigate its own investigators. Wait, Kane said, his eyes on the monitor. One of them stayed behind. He's leaving something at the gate. We watched as one of Red's men dropped a small, brown envelope on the concrete, then retreated into the rain. I'll get it, Kane said. He was back in less than a minute, the envelope dripping. He placed it on the desk in front of Adrian. Adrian didn't move. Kane opened it. It wasn't a note. It wasn't a threat. It was a photograph, printed on glossy paper, a candid shot, taken from a distance. It was me. I was at the Harbor and Hearth, standing behind the counter, smiling at something a customer had said. The light from the neon sign across the street was painting my face red. It must have been taken yesterday. The message was brutally simple. They had missed Adrian, but they knew exactly who had saved him. I was a target now. The photograph lay on the steel desk, a glossy 4x6-inch insult. The red neon light from the bar across the street painted my face in the picture, caught in a moment of happiness. A moment from another life. Maybe 24 hours ago, when my biggest worry was a gel filter for a stage light. The command center, which had felt like a high-tech fortress, now felt like a glass cage. They've been watching me for days, I whispered. My voice was thin, reedy. Adrian's hand rested on the corner of the photo, his face granite. It means they were planning this. It wasn't just the sticker, you were a variable, so they cataloged you. A variable. Delia Marr said, pacing, and now a liability. She's a civilian. Adrian, a loose end. Caldera just told us they plan to tie it. No, I said, my voice hardening. I pushed the photo away. I'm not a loose end. I'm the first thread you've found that leads back to the source. Garrison Provisions, the brown sugar, the box with the triangle. Delia stopped pacing. And what you're going to knock on their door? Hi, I'm the waitress who survived your drone attack. Can I see your shipping manifests? No, I said, looking at Kane. He hadn't moved, just watched. His assessment of me ongoing. We go in soft. They're looking for a threat, for one of Adrian's soldiers. They aren't looking for a baker, a small business owner, someone looking for a new supplier. A new kind of tension filled the room. Adrian hated the idea instantly. I could see the no forming in his eyes before he even spoke. Mina, that's out of the question. You're staying here. And do what? I shot back, my fear turning to frustration. Wait for them to send another drone. Wait for Jack's Red to show up. They took my picture, Adrian. They put my face on the table. I'm not bait. I'm already in the trap. The only way out is to break the mechanism, and the mechanism starts at Garrison Provisions. Kane finally spoke. She's right, boss. They'll expect a countermove, a show of force. They won't expect a business inquiry. Adrian looked between us, his jaw tight. He was trapped between his logic and his something else, his instinct to protect. Kane, he finally said, you go with her. You're her partner. You're in, you're out. 10 minutes, get the lay of the land, that's it. The next morning, the rain had cleared, leaving Port Garrison gray and smelling of wet concrete. We drove a nondescript panel van, not one of Adrian's black sedans. Kane, dressed in a plaid flannel shirt and worn jeans, looked convincingly like a contractor. I was in my own clothes, my old theater crew jacket and boots. I felt like I was in costume. Kane drove, his large hands resting lightly on the wheel. He passed me a small, pen-sized flashlight. It's a high-intensity ultraviolet, he said, not taking his eyes off the road. If they're marking the boxes like they marked your cup, they're not using regular ink. They'll use something that only shows under a specific light spectrum. A black light, I said, clicking it on. A faint purple cone appeared. Good, you're thinking like a stagehand. He glanced at me, the barest hint of a smile touching his lips. I think like a hunter. Garrison Provisions wasn't a high-security fortress. It was a dusty, pre-war warehouse in the old industrial sector, smelling of burlap and stale spices. The woman who met us at the loading dock was not a killer. She was in her late 50s, her hair tied back, her hands flowery. Worry lines were etched deep around her eyes. You must be the folks from Paloma Baking, she said, her voice thin but friendly. She wiped her hand on her apron before shaking mine. I'm Lindy Arquette. I'm the owner. Mina Paloma, I said, forcing a smile. This is my partner, Kane. Thanks for seeing us on such short notice. We're looking to scale up, and our current supplier just can't handle our volume. Oh, well, volume we have, Lindy said, gesturing us inside. It's mostly flour, salt, bulk yeast. The artisanal crowd doesn't usually come out this far. Kane played his role perfectly. His gravelly voice softened. Heard you had the best rates on bulk rye, ma'am. And we need to inspect the storage. We've had pest control issues with our last place. Oh, no, not here, Lindy said, leading us into the cavernous main floor. It was all standard pallets, forklifts, and dust motes dancing in the high windows. While Kane kept Lindy distracted, asking about freight elevator capacity and humidity control, I split off. I'll just check the spices. I called out. I walked fast. My heart was a kick drum. I found the aisle. Pallets labeled brown sugar, Demerara, Turbinado. They were stacked 12 feet high. I ducked between two stacks, out of Lindy's line of sight, and clicked on Kane's UV light. My stomach turned to ice. It was everywhere. Faint, but undeniable. Sprayed onto the shrink wrap of every pallet, on the cardboard boxes themselves, a hollow triangle, glowing a sickly, chemical purple. They weren't just tagging a single cup. They were tagging their entire supply chain, embedding the guidance system into the city's legitimate food distribution, ready to be shipped out to 100 cafes, restaurants, and bakeries, ready to target anyone, anywhere. Find something, dear. I jumped, clicking the light off and shoving it in my pocket. Lindy Arquette was standing right behind me. Just checking for pests, I stammered. Looks clean. Lindy gave me a sad, knowing look. She knew I was lying, but she didn't know the truth. It's clean, she said, sighing. My part of the warehouse is… Anyway. Kane had rejoined us, his face a neutral mask. Your part. Lindy gestured with a flowery hand toward the far corner of the warehouse. It was walled off with new, temporary fencing, draped in heavy black tarps, completely obscuring the view. A separate, private loading dock door was visible. I had to rent that corner out, she said, her voice dropping. After my husband, Ben, passed well. The margins are thin. A new company came in, offered me well, a lot. Paid 6 months up front. In cash, they said they were in specialty importing. What are they called? Kane asked, his tone still casual. Northlight Venturers, Lindy said. I don't ask questions. They have their own security, their own trucks. They use that private dock. I'm not really supposed to go over there. Kane and I locked eyes. Northlight Venturers. We had our link. Back in the command center at Warehouse 17, the mood was electric. Northlight Venturers, Delia said, her fingers a blur across her keyboard. Here we go. A shell corporation registered 3 months ago. Standard Delaware setup. Minimal paper trail. But the incorporation fee was paid by a blind trust which is managed by a law firm which, Seraphine. You snake. She spun a monitor around. The trust is funded by a legacy account that Seraphine D'Ambro has had signatory rights on for over 20 years. So it's her, Adrian said. He was standing by the window, staring out at the harbor, his reflection a pale ghost on the glass. It's all her. It gets worse. Priam chirped from his station, swiveling in his chair. I sent the biodyed drone home. Remember, I've been tracking the dye's half-life on Port Authority atmospheric sensors? It didn't just go to a random rooftop. It returned to Pier K. The old boatyard, Kane said, crossing his massive arms. That place was condemned a decade ago. It's structurally unsound. Exactly, Priam said, grinning. It's the perfect blind spot. The MSD doesn't patrol it, but I've been listening to the signals coming from it. It's not just a nest. Adrian, it's the hive. It's broadcasting high-bandwidth data bursts, encrypted, directly to the Northlight Venturers registered office downtown. That's the drone mother, the central command. Delia leaned forward, that sharp, dangerous smile returning. Then we hit it. We hit Pier K, a full tactical team. We cut the head off the snake. No. Adrian's voice was sharp. He turned from the window. That's what she expects. A violent response. She wants me to be my father, to start a war. She wants me to get bloody, so she can be the only one who looks clean. Then we draw them out, Delia countered, her eyes glittering. We feed them bad intelligence, a ghost in the machine. Priam, you leak a false shipping manifest. Something high value, untraceable microchips. Route the shipment right past the South Bridge, but in a civilian truck. She'll send a team to hit it. Kane said, Jack's red. Exactly, Delia said. And who will they be expecting to find in that truck? Not your men. They'll be looking for the weak link, the new variable. Her eyes slid, cold and calculating, to me. The room went dead silent. Adrian moved so fast I almost flinched. He was in Delia's face in a second, his voice a low, lethal growl. Absolutely not. She is out. We are not using her as bait. That line of thinking is finished. Do you understand me? You're being emotional. Adrian, Delia shot back, not yielding an inch. She's the perfect lure. They think she's a pawn, a terrified civilian. They won't expect her to be the trap. I said no, Adrian roared. The sound echoed off the glass. The first time I'd heard him lose that iron control. You're both wrong, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the echo. Adrian turned to me, his eyes blazing. The look on his face wasn't just anger. It was betrayal. Delia is right that I'm the lure. I said, hating the words as they came out. But you're right that I'm not bait. I'm not going to be a lamb in a truck. But that photo proves it. They are watching me. I can't move. So if I'm going to move, I can't look like me. I turned to Priam. The drone. It used an optical sensor and AI recognition to confirm the kill, right? Yeah, Priam said, catching on. It matched your facial geometry to the photo they had on file. AI recognition is lazy, I said, the old theater tech solutions flooding my brain. It's not looking for a person. It's looking for patterns. Specific distances between eyes, nose, mouth. You can break that. You don't need a disguise. You need a scrambler. I grabbed a tablet and a stylus. In theater, we use dazzle makeup to break up the face's lines. But for a camera, it's even easier. We just need to change the perceived planes. I can build a mask, something thin, lightweight, made of faceted, reflective triangles, like a low-poly version of a face. To their AI, it won't read as Mina. It might read as Delia or Kane or, most likely, just a jumble of light artifacts. It'll crash their targeting. Priam was grinning. A stage prop to defeat a killbot. I'm in. It's too dangerous, Mina, Adrian insisted, his voice low and tight. I'm already the target, Adrian, I snapped, stepping up to him. You can't protect me by locking me in this room. You can only protect me by letting me fight back with what I know. They're using tech. I'm using tech. Let's see whose is better. We were staring each other down, a battle of wills. When a comm on Priam's desk chirped, it was a dead channel. An old, unsecured Port Authority line that hadn't been used in years. Priam looked at Adrian, who gave a curt nod. Priam patched it through the main speakers. Static hissed, and then a voice. It was female, low, and smooth as aged whiskey. It was a voice that had never had to raise itself to be heard. Adrian. Adrian froze. He didn't just stop moving. It was like his entire nervous system had been shut down. His hand, which had been reaching for a tablet, stopped midair. I taught you to anticipate, my boy, the voice continued, laced with a terrifying, intimate affection. I taught you to see the entire board, from every angle. Yet here you are, reacting, hiding in your father's warehouse, just like he used to. Seraphine, Adrian breathed. The name was part curse, part wound. Don't repeat your father's mistakes. Adrian, she said, her voice a soft, silken reprimand. He was stubborn. He believed in rules when he was in a knife fight. It made him predictable. And it made him gone. This city doesn't reward stability. It rewards vision. Caldera is the vision. It's a parasite, Adrian bit out, finding his voice. It's business, she sighed, as if explaining to a child. This girl, this waitress, she's a complication, an emotional variable. Remove her. Show me you still have the will to do what is necessary. Show me you're not your father, and then we can talk about your future. The line clicked. She was gone. Adrian's hand, still frozen in the air, clenched into a fist so tight his knuckles went white. He was shaking. It was a tremor that started deep inside him, a rage so profound it was suffocating him. This was the crack in his armor. This was the wound. Seraphine wasn't just an enemy. She was his past. She was the debt he couldn't pay and the mentor he couldn't bring himself to fight. I walked over and gently, slowly, placed my hand over his clenched fist. He flinched, a violent, sharp intake of breath, but he didn't pull away. She's wrong, Adrian, I said, my voice soft but steel hard. Your father's mistake. His rules, that's the only reason you're still standing. That's why Kane and Delia and Priam are loyal. She doesn't have a team. She has employees. There's a difference. He slowly, agonizingly, uncurled his fist under my hand. His breathing was ragged. He looked at me, and the mask of the boss was gone. I saw the 15-year-old boy under the steel beam. We have to beat her, he whispered. Then we agree on the rules, I said, holding his gaze. We don't become her to stop her. We don't use her tactics. We don't kill. We find the legal leverage. We expose Northlight. We expose the MSD. We use the light, not the dark." He nodded, a new, cold resolve settling in his eyes. "We expose them." "Good," Delia said, her voice tight. She'd been staring at her screen, pale and silent. "Because I think I just found our stage." She projected her monitor onto the main wall. It was a press release, splashed across the society pages of the Port Garrison Herald. "The annual Aureate Lighthouse Club Charity Gala. Tonight, it's the biggest high society event of the year." She highlighted a name on the donor list, a name that bought a platinum-level table for $50,000. My stomach dropped. "On behalf of our generous sponsor, Northlight Venturers." "That's it," Adrian said, his voice flat and deadly. "Seraphine won't send Jax Red to a party like that. She'll be there herself. That's our door." The Aureate Lighthouse Club was not a building. It was a statement. It sat on the highest point of Port Garrison, a glass and steel tower built around the original 19th century lighthouse, its beam still sweeping the black water. The gala was a sea of black ties and silk dresses, the air thick with perfume and the sound of quiet. Confident money. The last 4 hours had been a blur. Delia had taken one look at my theater crew wardrobe and produced a midnight blue dress from a storage locker, a dress that probably cost more than my last 2 years' rent. It was silk, and it felt like armor. "You walk like a stagehand," she'd snapped, forcing me into a pair of impossibly high heels. "You're not hauling cable. You're an asset. Walk like you own the stage, not like you're sweeping it." I spent an hour learning how to stand still, how to hold a champagne flute I had no intention of drinking, how to make no sound like maybe later. My cover was perfect because it was true. Mina Paloma, event lighting coordinator. My name was on the vendor list. Adrian, looking impossibly sharp in a tailored tuxedo, was Mr. Voss, our newest patron of the Port Garrison Arts Fund. We were the most boring people in the room. And I had control of the lighting board. The club had a high-tech system, all networked. Priam had spent an hour slicing through their firewall. I was now in a small tech booth high above the ballroom, supposedly running the gobo light that projected the sponsors' logos onto the main wall. But from here, I could see everyone. Priam and Kane were on comms, their voices a low, steady murmur in my hidden earpiece. "Ballroom is clear. No sign of Jax Red," Kane reported. "But there's a lot of private security." "Adrian, you're on the floor," I whispered into my mic. "Mingle. You're just a patron." I watched him move through the crowd. He was a natural. He was playing the part he was born for, the one he was trying to escape. Then, at exactly 9:15, the room shifted. A hush fell. Seraphine Dambro had arrived. She was wearing a gown of simple black velvet that seemed to drink the light in the room. Her gray hair was swept up, and at her throat was a single, stunning piece of jewelry, a silver pin, crafted in the shape of a perfect, unbroken circle of fire, the caldera circle. She didn't just enter the room, she annexed it. She took a table near the center. "Mina, do you see her?" Adrian's voice was tight in my ear. "I see her," I said. "She's not alone." "I only see 2 aides," he said. "Then you're not looking right." I cycled to the next logo in my queue. The gobo shifted, and the logo for Northlight Venturers, a stylized NV, appeared on the wall. I accidentally nudged the focus. The logo blurred, then snapped back, drawing the eye. Seraphine didn't flinch, but her eyes, cold and assessing, lifted not to the logo. She looked straight up at the tech booth, straight at me. She couldn't see me through the tinted glass, but she knew. She knew the light was the weapon. "Okay, Priam," I whispered. "She's settled. Let's light her up." I had a spare follow spot, one I'd recalibrated earlier. I'd fitted it with a heavy infrared filter. To the human eye, it was just a dim, warm light. To a sensor, it was a blast furnace. "Kane, you have the thermal scope?" "Affirmative," his voice rumbled. "Watching her table." I aimed the IR spot and brought it up, slow, painting her table in invisible light. "Whoa!" Priam said. Got it. Mina, there's a micro-drone. Spider class, hovering right above her chandelier. It just lost its visual lock. It's scrambling, trying to reacquire her. It's blinded. And the human element, I asked. 2 tables over, Kane said, his voice grim. Man in the gray suit, he just reached under his jacket. And a waiter, by the east wall. He's not a waiter, he just put his hand to his earpiece. Looking for a signal. That's her ring. The drone provides the active defense. The men are the cleanup. Good, we're blind. I said, Adrian, she's exposed. Your move. I watched him cross the floor. It felt like walking into a lion's den with a stake tied around his neck. He stopped at her table, bending slightly. A perfect gentleman. Seraphine. His voice came through the comm, amplified by his discreet lapel mic. I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you'd retired. She looked up, a slow, maternal smile playing on her lips. Adrian, you look so much like your father. She gestured to the empty chair. But you're here, which means you're smarter. Sit. He sat. The tension was a wire pulled taut. I remember, she said, her voice a soft murmur. That day at North Harbor, the container crane. You were so brave. I taught you something that day. Didn't I? Sometimes, the only way to save the ship is to cut the anchor. I saw him flinch. The old memory, the old debt. Port Garrison is a mess. Adrian, she continued, sipping her water. This old way your father's way, it's just rust. Northlight Venturers. My partners were offering a clean solution. A full buyout of the Voss network, 100% over market value. Cash. You walk away, clean hands, a new life. You've earned it. Delia, I whispered into the comm. What's the status on the south exit? I want to know where her guards are. Silence. Delia report. Just static. A dead channel. Priam, where's Delia? Her comm just went dead. Priam's voice was sharp. Tri-band failure. It's not accidental. She's offline. That's 3 full minutes she's been dark. A cold spike of dread hit me. 3 minutes. Long enough to make a call. Long enough to send a file. Long enough for the house security in the club's security. Not ours to get an alert. My photo, the one from the cafe? On the floor. Adrian was hesitating. I could see it. The offer was real. A clean exit. An end to the fight. He could walk away. And Seraphine, the woman who'd saved his life, would handle the rest. He was being swallowed by the past. This was the emotional variable she'd wanted. Adrian, I said, my voice sharp, cutting through his comm. We're not here to negotiate. We're here for the evidence. Remember the mission. It was like a splash of cold water. He blinked. The mask snapped back on. That's a generous offer, Seraphine, he said, his voice suddenly cool and level. He smiled, and it was a wolf smile. But the port isn't messy, it's just mismanaged, which is why we're expanding. We're here to stay. He stood up. Enjoy the gala. As he walked away, Kane's voice came back on. I lost one of her men, the waiter. He didn't go to the restroom. He went to the basement, service corridor. He's in the club's main server room. My heart leaped. Priam, can you get Kane access? Already did. Kane, you're in. I'm in, Kane confirmed. His voice was breathless, heavy. Mina, my God, you were right. It's not just the spices at Garrison. They have a machine here, a high-speed industrial label printer. It's networked directly to the club's catering database. It's printing the IR triangles. Right now, automatically. Sticking them to the bottoms of the champagne glasses, the gift bags. They're tagging everyone, I whispered, horrified. The mayor, the chief of police, half the city council. They're building a target list of the entire city elite. Seraphine stood up from her table. Her dinner was untouched. She began to walk toward the exit, a queen leaving a party that no longer amused her. Her path took her directly past the alcove leading to the tech booth. She paused, looking up into the dark glass, right where I sat. She stopped. I instinctively recoiled, but she couldn't see me. She was just sensing. Then, her voice, low and clear, not over the comm, but from the hallway below. I heard it through the soundproof glass. "Get out, girl!" I froze. "You're a clever little prop," Seraphine said to the glass, her smile thin and cruel. "But I have other debts to collect tonight, and I always get paid." She swept out of the room. "Delia's back," Priam said suddenly. Her comm just lit up. "Signal jammer?" Delia's voice was strained, breathless. "Sorry, the whole corridor was a dead zone. I'm back. What did I miss?" "Kane?" Adrian's voice cut in. "All business. You're in the server room. That printer, it's networked. Find the source. Find the Northlight database." "Working," Kane rumbled. "They routed it through the club's firewall, but they left the internal port open. They're arrogant." "I see it." "Kane," Priam shouted, his fingers flying. "Feed me the handshake. Yes, I'm in. I'm mirroring their primary drive. Holy Adrian, I've got it. It's the full distribution log. Every delivery from Garrison, every tag printed, every manifest for Pier K. It links Northlight, Caldera, and the drone mother. We got her. We got the whole thing." A wave of relief so profound it made me dizzy. We'd won. We'd actually won. I looked down at the ballroom, at Adrian, who was standing by the pillar. Looking up at my booth, I could just make out the shape of him. And I saw him smile, a real, unguarded smile. "We're downloading now," Priam said, the victory clear in his voice. Wait." The triumph in his voice vanished, replaced by ice. "Adrian, wait, my encryption key, the one I'm using to pull the data." "What is it, Priam?" Adrian asked, his smile fading. "It's being mirrored," Priam said, his voice a horrified whisper. "From inside our own network, someone is copying my copy." I gripped the edge of the console. "What does that mean?" "It means someone is watching us watch them," Priam said, his voice shaking. "Someone knew exactly what we were looking for, and only 4 people have that level of key access. Me, Adrian, Kane, and Delia." The ride back from the Oriate Lighthouse Club was silent. The air in the armored SUV was so thick with suspicion, it was hard to breathe. Delia sat in the front passenger seat, rigid, staring straight ahead. Kane drove, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror with cold regularity. Adrian and I sat in the back. No one spoke Priam's accusation aloud. We didn't have to. The air crackled with it. When we got back to Warehouse 17, Adrian just said, "Delia, you're with Priam. See if you can trace the mirror, find out how it was done. Kane, secure the perimeter." It wasn't a request. It was an isolation order. Delia knew she was a prisoner in the command center, her every move now monitored. She just nodded, her face pale, and walked out of the loading bay, her shoulders straight. Adrian led me not to the command center, but up a narrow, hidden flight of steel stairs I hadn't seen before. It opened into a small, warm space tucked under the eaves of the massive building. It was an attic, but it felt like a hidden apartment, an old leather sofa, a single fireplace where embers glowed, walls lined with books and old port maps. And the sound of the rain. It was back, a steady, rhythmic drumming on the corrugated steel roof. It was the only sound. It was the sound of the café, a lifetime ago. I was still in the midnight blue dress, feeling like a costume that was too tight, a role I didn't want to play. My feet were throbbing from the heels. I slipped them off, the relief instantaneous. I walked over to a small, antique mirror hanging by the door and began pulling the heavy pins from my hair. It felt like I was removing pieces of armor, one by one. My hair, which Delia's stylist had forced into a severe, elegant knot, tumbled down over my shoulders. I saw my reflection in the tarnished glass, but it was the man behind me in the reflection that caught my breath. It wasn't Adrian Voss, the boss. The man I saw in the mirror had lost his iron mask. The tuxedo jacket was off, hung neatly on the back of a chair. His tie was gone. The top button of his white shirt undone, the tension from the gala, the ice-cold fury from Seraphine's call. The suspicion of Delia, it had all drained away, leaving him looking tired and young, just a man, standing in a quiet room, listening to the rain. He'd moved to the fireplace, leaning his forearm against the mantel. The firelight cast flickering, warm shadows across his face. "She knew," he said, his voice quiet, raw. He hadn't said a word since we left the club. Seraphine. She knew exactly which strings to pull. The debt. My father, she's right, he was stubborn, and it got him killed. "He was principled," I said, turning from the mirror. "There's a difference." "Is there?" He looked at me, his eyes dark with a vulnerability that scared me more than any of Seraphine's drones. "My principles, my rules, they just put you in the line of fire. That photograph, her threat at the gala, this isn't your fight, Mina, but I brought you into it. Everyone who gets close to me, everyone I try to protect." He looked down into the flames. "I'm the anchor. Just like she said, I'm the one who sinks the ship." I walked across the room, the old floorboards warm under my stockinged feet. I stopped just short of him. The air between us was electric, thick with everything unsaid. "You're wrong," I said. "You didn't bring me into this. You didn't pull me in." I stepped in. I saw the sticker on the cup. I heard the rotors. I made a choice. I chose to grab that cup. I chose to go to Garrison Provisions. I chose to sit in that tech booth tonight. I met his gaze, unflinching. "I am choosing to stand right here. This is not you losing someone because of you. This is me choosing to be with you." His gaze dropped from my eyes to my shoulder. He raised his hand, hesitant, stopping an inch from my skin. "You have," he whispered, his voice rough, "from the party. Glitter on your—" He didn't finish. He was asking permission, not taking, just asking. I nodded, just once. His fingers, which I'd seen clench with enough force to break bone, were impossibly gentle. He brushed the specks of silver from my collarbone. The touch was light as air, but it sent a shockwave straight through my chest. It wasn't a boss's touch. It wasn't even a lover's. It was just human. A point of contact in the storm. He didn't pull his hand away immediately. His fingertips rested there, warm against my skin. The room was warm, the fireplace crackling, the rain drumming a steady tap-tap-tap on the roof. Under his touch, I could feel my own pulse, unsteady and fast. He looked overwhelmed, lost in the simple, terrifying act of a gentle touch. I mirrored his movement. I slowly lifted my own hand, not in fear, not in passion, but just to connect. I laid my palm flat against the starched white front of his shirt, right over his heart. It was hammering. A powerful, rapid thump, thump, thump that was entirely at odds with his controlled exterior. I felt it beneath my hand, a living, frantic thing. I just stood there, my hand on his chest, his fingers on my collarbone. We listened to the rain, and I felt the moment his heartbeat, wild and fast, began to slow, to match the steady rhythm of the storm outside. He looked down at my hand on his chest, then back to my eyes. The professor, the boss, the victim, the warrior, they were all gone. It was just Adrian. I don't know who moved first. Maybe we both did. The air between us dissolved. I rose up on my toes, just slightly. It was my invitation. He accepted. He leaned down, his head tilting, and his lips met mine. It wasn't the kind of kiss they write about in breathless novels. It wasn't explosive or desperate. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was a question and an answer all in one. It tasted of the rain and the fire and the impossible tension of the last 48 hours, all of it melting away into simple, quiet warmth. It was a promise of after, a promise of clean. When the kiss ended, we didn't pull apart. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. I rested my forehead against his, my own hands finding their way around his back, my fingers lacing together. His dress shirt was warm, and I could feel the solid, steady strength of him. He was trembling, just slightly. Or maybe I was. Maybe we both were. We just stood there, breathing each other in, anchored in the eye of the hurricane. The silence was absolute, broken only by the fire and the rain. It was the safest I had felt since I'd wiped down that espresso machine. "Mina," he whispered, his voice thick, his forehead still pressed to mine. "I'm here," I whispered back. "Even if all this Delia, Seraphine, even if it all sours tomorrow, even if it all falls," he said, his voice raw. I tightened my grip. "You'll still have me." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his gray eyes searching mine in the firelight. "I won't let you run alone. Mina, not ever." A small, tired smile touched his lips. "You know, before all this, I was looking at a property, an old vaudeville house, the Orpheum, down on 32nd Street. It's derelict." I smiled back, the shared image a relief. "It's got good bones, good acoustics. The lighting grid is a death trap, but the proscenium is beautiful." "I was thinking," he said, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw, "a community theater, funded by the new Clean Voss Network, a place for kids from the docks, a real arts program." "It would need a lighting designer," I murmured, leaning into his touch. "It would," he agreed, his smile widening. "Someone who knows how to handle a tricky follow spot." It was a glimpse of a future, a clean one built on stages and light, not on shadows and drones. We stood there for another minute, another lifetime. The fantasy of a normal life, of a community theater, felt so real, so close. I could almost smell the sawdust and the gel filters. Then, the sharp digital buzz of his phone on the mantelpiece shattered the quiet. It was a sound that didn't belong in this room. It was the sound of the command center, the sound of the fight. Adrian let out a long, slow breath. He let me go, the warmth vanishing instantly, and picked up the phone. "Priam." He listened. I watched his face, the brief softness, the warmth, the hope it all evaporated. The iron mask didn't just return, it was forged anew, harder, colder, and terrifying. He didn't say anything, and he just listened, his knuckles white as he gripped the phone. "Adrian," I asked, my voice small, "what is it?" He slowly, deliberately, ended the call and placed the phone back on the mantel. He looked at me, but his eyes were seeing something far away. "That was Priam," he said, his voice a flat, dead monotone. "The mirror did Delia. Delia's in the clear. How but the key?" "It wasn't Delia," he said. "The download we got at the gala, the Northlight logs, the link to Caldera, all of it." He finally looked at me, his eyes empty. "The logs were wiped remotely, 5 minutes ago. Seraphine let us have them. She let us download the entire drive." "I don't understand," I said, the cold dread returning. Why would she let us win?" "Because," Adrian said, walking to the window and staring out at the storm. "It wasn't the real drive. It was a plant. She wanted us to hack it. She wanted us to think we'd won. She was just using us to trace our own network access. She didn't mirror our hack. We mirrored hers. She's one step ahead. She's been one step ahead the entire time." The warmth of the attic evaporated the second we stepped back into the command center. The dream of a community theater and a clean life felt like a cruel joke. A fantasy dangled in front of us just before the trap sprang shut. We were back at the main table, the 5 of us, Adrian, Kane, Priam, Delia, and me. The air was sour. Priam's discovery that Seraphine had planted the data, that she had let us win, hung over us like a physical weight. She hadn't just beaten us, she had humiliated us. Delia was the first to break the silence, her voice a low, furious hiss. She played us. She anticipated our every move. She used our own tech against us. She slammed her palm on the steel table. "No more. No more strategy. No more subtlety. We know where the hive is. Pier K. I say we end this the old way. We burn it. We burn that condemned pier to the waterline, drone mother and all. We cut the head off the snake and we watch the body burn." "No," I said. Everyone looked at me. Delia's eyes narrowed into slits. Absolutely not, Delia," I said, my voice shaking slightly but gaining strength. "That's exactly what she wants. Think you burn the pier, and what happens? It's chaos. It's violence. It's the lead story on every channel. Voss Logistics solves dispute with arson. Seraphine paints herself as the victim, the legitimate businesswoman pushed out by a violent crime family. She'll have the DUC and the MSD, the real ones, lock this port down so tight Adrian won't be able to ship a box of paper clips. We don't win by becoming her. We win by exposing her. Exposing her with what? Delia shot back. The evidence she fed us, it's gone. Mina, we have nothing. We have the pier, I said, walking to the main monitor. We have the location. She thinks we're going to react with violence. She's counting on Adrian to be his father. I looked at him. His face was a mask, but his eyes were on me, waiting. So we do the opposite. We don't hit her in the dark. We drag her, and her entire operation into the light. How? Adrian's voice was quiet, a single word that cut through Delia's anger. I took a breath. This was theater. My kind of theater. We call it the Lighthouse Protocol. We turn Pier K into a stage, and we make everyone in this city an audience member. I turned to Priam. You said the DUC and the MSD are on her payroll. Right. Parts of them, yeah, he confirmed. The parts that matter. Good, I said. Then we use them. Priam, you're going to send an anonymous, very detailed citizen safety tip to the DUC, complaining about structural instability and hazardous materials at Pier K at the same time. You're sending a separate internal affairs tip to the MSD, flagging a high-volume, unauthorized drone hub operating in their restricted airspace. You force their hand. They have to send inspectors, or they look incompetent. That just gets the cops there, Kane said, his arms crossed. Exactly, I said, and at the same time, Voss Logistics will publicly announce an emergency harbor safety drill at Pier K, effective immediately. We invite the media. We invite the Port Authority. We're showing the city how transparent we are. Seraphine's corrupt officials, the real DUC and MSD, are now trapped. They have to show up, or they defy a public safety event, and they'll be on camera. Priam's eyes lit up. Oh, that's nasty. They'll be forced to inspect their own illegal operation, live on the 6 o'clock news. But that won't get Caldera, Delia argued. They'll just pull back. Let the pier get inspected. They will, I agreed, unless they have a reason not to, unless there's something more valuable in play. I looked back at Priam. You spoofed a red cargo signal before. Do it again. But this time, make it look like a massive, high-value, illicit shipment, something Caldera desperately wants, is being rerouted to Pier K during the drill. Make it look like one of their own double-crossed them. Seraphine will be caught. She can't let her drone mother be seized by honest inspectors. And she can't let her fake shipment be seized by her own corrupt officials. She'll have to send her own people. Jack's Red, the Northlight team, they'll show up, expecting chaos, and they'll walk right onto our stage. And the whole thing, Priam said, a slow, vicious grin spreading across his face, is being live-streamed to an offshore server, completely out of her reach. A heavy silence fell. Adrian studied the plan on the monitor. It's high risk, Kane said. It puts a lot of assets in one unsecured location. And it needs a director, Adrian said, his eyes finding mine. The drill needs a civilian coordinator, a technical expert, a neutral face. I'll do it, I said. The words were out before I could stop them. Mina, no, his voice was flat. You're the one person she'll recognize. You're the emotional variable. You're the target. I'm the only one who can, I argued, stepping toward him. I'm the only one who actually knows lighting, who can believably coordinate a safety drill's technical setup. I'm the only one who knows what to look for. They're expecting me to be in a safe house. Adrian, the last place they'll look for me is in plain sight, wearing a hard hat and holding a clipboard. He was about to fight me. I could see the rage building in his eyes, the fear of losing someone else. Kane stepped in. She's right, boss, but she doesn't go in soft. He looked at me. You'll wear a vest, woven fiber, low profile. It'll stop a 9mm. It'll feel like being hit by a sledgehammer. But you'll live. You'll be flanked by me and 2 others. disguised as your tech crew. Adrian looked at Kane, then at me. He hated it, but he was trapped by my logic. He nodded. Once. As Priam and I started planning the technical setup, I saw Kane quietly pull Adrian aside. I couldn't hear the words, only the low rumble of Kane's voice. But his eyes kept cutting to Delia, who was angrily sketching out intercept routes on a separate monitor. Adrian looked exhausted, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and then gave another short, reluctant nod. Delia was cleared of the last incident, but Kane's gut was telling him something was still wrong. She was being watched. Later, hours into the frantic prep, Adrian found me in the loading bay. I was checking a crate of pocket projectors. He stood in the doorway, blocking the light from the command center. The intimacy of the attic felt 1,000 miles away. "You're enjoying this," he said. It wasn't an accusation, it was a marvel. "I'm in my element," I admitted, coiling a cable. "This is just a stage production, a very, very dangerous one. I'm setting the lights, I'm calling the cues. The actors just don't know they're in the play." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Mina, when we're out there, that debt I owe Seraphine, it's real. If she's there, if she calls it in." I stopped what I was doing and faced him. The air between us was heavy again, but not with romance, with discipline. "Then you break your promise to her, not the one to me." I put my hand on his forearm. His muscles were like steel cables. "You are not the 15-year-old boy under that crane anymore. You're the man who owns the port, and I'm your lighting designer. If I call evacuate, if I say the word cut, you don't hesitate. You don't negotiate. You don't try to save me. You get out. You follow my cue. Promise me." His gray eyes searched mine. He was looking for a crack, for the waitress from the café. He only found the director. "I promise," he said. "Good," I said, turning back to the crate. "Now help me prep these. I'm going to hide them in the safety signage. If Caldera sends their own drones, their AI tracking will be useless. We're creating our own blind spots." We were 6 hours from go time. The DUC and MSD had taken the bait. The media was sharpening their pencils. Priam was building the fake red cargo signal. Then, a new message flashed on Priam's main screen. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't code. It was a simple, plain text email sent to an old public Voss Logistics info address. "It's from her," Priam said, his voice hushed. He put it on the main monitor. "Adrian, a storm is coming. There is no need for us both to be destroyed by it. The old Oriate lighthouse. Not the club. The original tower. Midnight, come alone. Let's find a bloodless end." S. Adrian stared at it. I could see the war behind his eyes. The debt. The chance to end it. One-on-one without the collateral damage of the lighthouse protocol. It was the honorable way out she'd offered at the gala. "It's a trap," Delia said, stating the obvious. "Of course it's a trap," Adrian said softly. "She's trying to split me from the operation." "You can't go," Kane said. "I have to," Adrian said. "If I don't, she'll know our plan is in motion. She expects me to be desperate enough to take this meeting." "Then I'm going with you." I said. All three of them looked at me. "Mina, no," Adrian started. "That's the rule, Adrian," I said, standing up, my voice final. "We just made it. I won't let you run alone. You don't walk into her traps alone either. The lighthouse protocol is my operation. The meeting with Seraphine is yours. We do them both. We go together." He looked at me for a long, hard second. He saw I wouldn't bend. He nodded. "We go together." The mobile command van was parked on a hill overlooking Pier K, 1,000 yards away. It was chaos. Floodlights, which I was remotely controlling, cut through the pre-dawn gloom. DUC vans and MSD cruisers were parked at odd angles. Men in jackets were yelling at each other. Our drill had successfully become their nightmare. "It's perfect," I whispered, watching the feeds. "Mina," Priam said, his voice tight, "the bait is in the water. Caldera is here. Thermal shows 4, no, 5 signatures. They just entered Pier K from a submerged access tunnel. They're moving toward the drone mother. They're taking the bait. Good, Adrian said. He was in tactical gear, simple black, no logos. Kane, prep the boat. We leave for the lighthouse in 10. Wait, Priam said, his eyes glued to his console. Wait, I'm getting a new signal. It's internal. What do you mean? I asked, my blood running cold. It's coming from inside this van, a high-frequency data burst, heavily encrypted, running parallel to our main comms. It's oh my God. He looked up, his face pale with horror, his eyes landing on the one person who wasn't looking at him. Delia. She was staring straight ahead, her fingers frozen on her keyboard, a single, strange ping now visible on Priam's screen, originating from her terminal. She is dirty, Priam whispered. She's signaling them. She's telling them it's a trap, right now. The moment Priam's accusation hung in the air of the van, the world stopped. Delia didn't look at him. She didn't look at any of us. She just stared at her blank screen. Kane's hand had moved, almost imperceptibly, to the holster under his arm. Delia? Adrian's voice was a flat, dead thing. All the warmth from the attic, all the fire from the planning was gone. Why, she has my son, Delia whispered. Her voice was broken. She found a file, a juvenile record I'd paid a fortune to bury. He's at college. He's clean. She said she'd ruin him. She said she'd send him to prison unless I played my part. So you did, Adrian stated. The gala, the network access. She owns me, Adrian. Delia looked up, her eyes swimming with tears I knew, instinctively, were real. She knew you wouldn't go to the lighthouse alone. Not really. She knew you'd have a backup. She told me to plant the signal, to let you catch me, to make you think the betrayal was just about Pier K. But the real trap is at the lighthouse. She's waiting. For both of you. She's right, I said, my voice cold. It's a pincer. She wanted us to find you out, to focus on you and on Pier K. She thinks the real threat is here, in this van. She doesn't know we are the real threat. We still go. The boat ride to the old Oriate lighthouse was silent, the electric motor a low hum against the rising wind. Kane had stayed with the van to manage the Pier K protocol, his face grim. He just gave Adrian a look. End this. This wasn't the sparkling, high society club. This was the original. A forgotten, black stone tower on the farthest point of the jetty, a place where waves crashed on 3 sides. We climbed the slick, wet stones. Adrian used a key, an old, heavy iron key, to open the main door. The air inside was cold. It smelled of deep, primal salt, of rust, and the sharp, metallic tang of old copper. It was a tomb. The entire massive circular room was draped in heavy canvas tarps, hanging from the ceiling like theater curtains. Hiding the crumbling walls, it made the space feel intimate, suffocating, a stage, set for a final act. She was standing with her back to us, looking out a high, curved window at the churning gray water. The sun wasn't up yet. You came, Seraphine D'Ambrose said. Her voice was calm, melodic. I'm glad. Your father wouldn't have... He would have sent his men. He would have sent Kane. I'm not my father, Adrian said. He stopped 10 feet from her. I stood just behind him, my hand in the pocket of my jacket, clutching the hard fiber vest Kane had forced me to wear. She turned. In the dim light, she looked timeless. Her eyes, clear and sharp, held no sign of age. She was in simple slacks and a dark cashmere sweater. She looked like a professor. Or a predator. No, you're not, she said, a small, sad smile playing on her lips. That's why there's still hope. She gestured to an old wooden table in the center of the room. A single lantern illuminated a large, unrolled map of Port Garrison. It's a simple offer. Adrian, the one I made at the gala, but without the pretense. This city, it can't be clean. It's built on shadows. It needs a dark engine to make the bright parts run. She traced a line on the map, a line that perfectly divided the port. Voss Logistics keeps the light, your name, your father's legacy, the clean shipping, the community theaters. She smiled, and my blood ran cold. She knew. You get the public face, Caldera Circle Northlight. We operate the machinery underneath. We take the risks. We move the product the city really wants. We handle the problems, we get the profit, we split it, 50-50. You call using experimental weapons on civilians risk, I said, my voice too loud in the stone room. Seraphine's eyes snapped to me, as if just noticing I was there. The waitress, still talking. You are a distraction, girl, a symptom of his weakness. She turned back to Adrian, dismissing me completely. We're family. Adrian, or we were, that bond is stronger than this. She waved her hand at me. I remember that day. North Harbor. You were 15. That steel beam, it was 4 tons, maybe 5. Your father's crew, your crew they ran. They left you to die. Her voice softened, becoming intimate, hypnotic. I didn't run. I crawled under that wreckage. I put my own body between you and that unstable gantry. I saved your life. She stepped closer, close enough to touch him. I am not asking you to repay me, my boy. I am asking you to be sensible. I gave you your life. Don't throw it away for a principle. Debts must be paid. Pay this one by being smart, by surviving. Adrian was frozen. He was seeing it. The rain, the twisted metal, the smell of fear. He was that 15-year-old boy, trapped by a debt he could never, ever repay. I saw the quiver in his jaw. He was losing. I stepped forward, putting myself between them. We're not here for a deal, Seraphine. My hand came out of my pocket, not with a weapon, but with my tablet. I held it up, the screen's light illuminating the darkness. We know about Pier K, I said, my voice ringing with a strength I didn't feel. We know about the drone mother. We know about the MSD payroll. And right now, the Lighthouse Protocol is live. DUC, MSD, and the media are all crawling over your nest. We don't want a merger, we want a dissolution. Shut down Caldera Circle. Turn over your hardware. Walk away from this port. Her maternal smile didn't waver, but her eyes went flat. Brave. There is no compromise, I said, my voice shaking. There is no 50-50 split on blood money. Seraphine actually laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound, like glass breaking. Blood, she said. My dear, I don't deal in blood. I deal in efficiency. The target is removed. The asset is acquired. No mess. She looked at me, and the mask finally, terrifyingly, fell. But you keep making a mess. You're an error in the calculation. I don't need blood, girl. I just need to clean up my loose ends. And you, she smiled, are the loosest end I've ever seen. A heavy thud came from the doorway behind us, the one we'd entered. Jax Red stepped out of the shadows. He wasn't in a fake uniform. He was in full black tactical gear, his face a mask of cold amusement, a short, ugly firearm held at the low, ready. And you, a new voice choked out. From the shadows by the spiral staircase, Delia Marr emerged. She looked wrecked. Her blazer was gone, her hands bound by a zip tie. You shouldn't have come, boss. Delia, Adrian breathed. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of ultimate betrayal. She has my son, Adrian, Delia cried, the words ripping from her throat. She has the file. She said she'd ruin him. She told me to bring you here, to set the trap. She promised she'd let him go if I... A mother's love, Seraphine said, walking back to the table, calm as a surgeon. So predictable, so useful. She did a fine job, didn't she? Setting the stage, luring you away from your little light show at the pier. She turned to Adrian. Her voice was soft again, the voice of the woman who had crawled under the steel beam. It's over. Adrian, don't fight. You're the nephew I raised. You're the boy I saved. Don't make me do this. And he broke. He didn't fall. He didn't cry. He just folded. He lowered his head, a single agonizing dip of his chin, a gesture of surrender. The debt was too heavy. He was crushed. That was my cue. He was lost. I wasn't... You're right, Seraphine, I said. My voice was loud, a stage director calling a cue. She and Red looked at me, surprised by the defiance. It is a stage. My thumb hit the master execute key on my tablet, and the Lighthouse Protocol is live. The media is at Pier K, the DUC is at Pier K, and we are live streaming everything. "Delia, now!" Seraphine screamed. Delia, despite her bound hands, lunged forward and slammed her shoulder against a wall-mounted utility box. The single lantern on the table died. The faint safety lights above the door died. Total darkness. A complete 2-second blackout. She'd found a breaker, a vulnerability in my network. I heard the scrape of Jax Red's boot. He was moving. He wasn't going for Adrian, he was coming for me. A massive armored arm clamped around my waist, lifting me off my feet. A heavy, gloved hand covered my mouth and nose. I was thrashing, but he was a mountain of solid muscle. My hair, I'd pinned it up. I wasn't wearing a dress, but I'd used the heavy steel pin, a 6-inch piece of sharpened rigging equipment I'd kept from the theater to secure the knot. My hand flew up, ripped the pin from my hair. I stabbed backward, blind, jamming the sharpened steel point with all my strength into the gap I knew had to be there, the space between his armored vest and his hip. He roared. It wasn't a yell. It was a sound of pure, animalistic pain. His grip on my face vanished. His arm spasmed. He dropped me. I hit the stone floor hard. Crash! The sound of a steel door bursting off its hinges echoed through the tower. A maintenance hatch, hidden by one of the tarps, flew open. "Get down!" a voice bellowed. Kane. Pop, pop, pop. A rapid, sickeningly heavy sound, like a high-powered nail gun. It was from Jax Red's weapon. Kane grunted, a deep, heavy sound. As he took the hits, he was wearing full, heavy armor, and he stumbled but didn't fall. He was firing back, but his weapon sounded different, lighter. "Rubber slugs," Jax yelled, a note of surprise in his voice. "He's not lethal." The lights flickered back on. Priam, rebooting the system from the van. The scene was chaos. Kane, a giant in black, was grappling with Jax Red, a battle of two titans. Adrian was moving. He wasn't looking at Seraphine, and he wasn't helping Kane. He was looking at me. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising, and hauled me to my feet. "The stairs, Mina. Now." He didn't run. He pulled me, dragging me toward the old iron spiral staircase in the center of the room that led up to the light itself. I glanced back. Seraphine was gone. The canvas tarp by the window was moving. She'd slipped out. Delia was scrambling out the main door, disappearing into the pre-dawn gloom. Kane shoved Jax Red backward, breaking the grapple. Red, seeing his principal was gone, threw a small smoking pellet at the floor. Thick, acrid smoke instantly filled the room. "Go, go!" Kane yelled, his voice already choked by the smoke. "The feed is live! Get out!" Adrian pulled me up the iron steps, into the winding darkness of the tower. My tablet was still clutched in my hand, its screen a beacon. On it, the live stream from Pier K was crystal clear. The sun was just beginning to break the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gray and fire. The DUC and MSD officials were staring, horrified, as one of Priam's hidden cameras zoomed in on the Caldera Circle logo on the side of the drone mother, right as Jax Red's team realized they'd been had. The protocol was working, the trap was sprung. But Seraphine was gone, and she'd taken Delia with her. The air in the mobile command van was toxic. We'd piled back in, me, Adrian, and Kane, slamming the door on the pre-dawn chaos of Pier K, the Lighthouse Protocol. My operation was a staggering success. Priam's monitors showed a dozen different news feeds, all broadcasting the same. Damning footage panicked DUC officials, Caldera's logo on the drone mother, and Jax Red's team, unmasked and exposed by my light blast. We had won the public war, but the silence in the van told me we had lost the private one. "Ribs," Kane grunted. He was stripping off his heavy tactical vest, revealing a massive, spider-webbing bruise that was already turning a deep, sickly purple. The rubber slugs from Red's weapon hadn't penetrated, but they'd done their job. "He hits like a mule. She'll be gone by now." Delia, too. Adrian said nothing. He was slumped in the co-captain's chair, staring at the looping footage of Seraphine's empty chair in the lighthouse. He'd been silent the entire ride back, his mind still trapped in that stone room. She called me nephew. He whispered, his voice was hollow, stripped of all its authority. She put her hand on the table. She reminded me of the debt, and I froze. I let her walk. He looked at Kane's injuries, then at me. His face was a mask of self-loathing. She set the trap, and I walked right into it, dragging all of you with me. Kane took the hits. You were a target, and I just froze. I couldn't stand it. The intimacy of the attic, the promise we'd made, it all felt like a lie. This was the truth. This was the man still shackled to a ghost. I took a step back, physically putting the width of the van between us. The air I'd shared with him now felt thin and cold. "She's right, Adrian," I said. He flinched, looking up at me, his eyes full of a pain I couldn't reach. "Mina?" "She's right," I repeated, my voice hard, merciless. "You are still that 15-year-old boy under the beam. She doesn't need Jack's red. She doesn't need drones. She has a memory, a ghost, and it's 1,000 times more effective than any weapon in her arsenal." "That's not fair," he choked out. "Fair," I snapped, the adrenaline and fear of the last hour igniting into white-hot anger. Kane has cracked ribs. I was seconds from being zip-tied and thrown in a trunk by a professional cleaner. All because you hesitated. Because she called you nephew. I cannot do this anymore. I will not. I stepped toward him, my finger jabbing at his chest. "I'm not just a girlfriend. Adrian, I'm your strategist, and I'm telling you, as your strategist, you are compromised." I took a deep breath, the ultimatum rising in my throat, cold and final. "This is it. If you don't cut that cord, if you don't, right now, dethrone her in your own mind, then I can't stand in the line of fire with you. I can't be your anchor and your front line. She will always use your loyalty to her to hurt the people standing next to you. And I will not be her collateral damage." He stared at me, his face pale. The silence in the van was absolute. Kane and Priam weren't even breathing. "Don't you see the pattern?" I pleaded, my anger breaking, desperation seeping in. "It's emotional control. 101, it's a script. Act 1, she recalls the past, the debt, the beam. Act 2, she belittles the present, I'm a waitress, a prop. Your new life is a mistake. Act 3, she isolates you using Delia's son, using your own guilt. She makes you feel like you have no choice but to follow her cues." He was silent for a full minute, staring at his hands. He looked up, and something in his eyes had changed. The guilt was gone. The boy was gone. The weakness had been burned away, leaving a core of pure, cold steel. "You're right," he said. His voice was quiet, but it had a new, terrifying finality. "It's a pattern, a predictable one. She's not my mentor. She's not my savior. She's just an opponent who's using a script, and she just used it for the last time." He turned to Priam. "The live stream. What's the status?" It's viral, boss," Priam said, his focus snapping back to the monitors. "The mayor is on live TV demanding the MSD director resign. DUC is in full panic. They're trying to spin it, but the footage of the Caldera drone mother is everywhere. We're winning." "Good," Adrian said. He unbuckled his seatbelt and stood. He looked at me, and it wasn't the look of a lover. It was the look of a general. "Mina, you're the director. You called this. You see it through to the end. Give them the finale. I'm cutting all channels." He meant it. He was severing the last thread. The old Mina would have been relieved. The new one just saw her next move. "Then we flipped the asset she left behind," I said. I turned to Priam. "Get me Delia Mar. Now." "Mina, she's gone. She's a ghost." "She's not a ghost. She's a mother," I said. "She's running to the only asset she has left, her son. He's at college upstate. Find her. I don't care how." It took Priam less than 10 minutes. "Got her. She's at a bus station in Albany. Her phone's on. I'm patching you through. Video." Her face, streaked with tears and dirt, filled my private tablet. She looked broken. "Delia," I said. She physically jumped, looking around the grimy station in terror. "Mina, please, I had to. He's my boy. He's all I have." "I know," I said, my voice softening. "And Seraphine used that, and you used us. We're even. But right now, Seraphine is falling, and she will pull you and your son down with her, or you can take the escape route I'm offering you." What escape route?" she whispered. "Voss Logistics has a better legal team than Caldera, and we don't threaten children," I said, the words sharp and clear. "You give us the real evidence, everything, the master ledger, the offshore accounts, the key. You testify against her. In exchange, Adrian's lawyers make that juvenile file of your son's disappear. Not bury it, expunge it. He gets a new identity, a full scholarship, and a protection detail. Starting right now, you have 10 seconds to decide." She sobbed, a deep, racking sound, but she nodded. She kept the real data, a dead man's switch, a physical key, in case anyone ever flipped. "Where, Delia?" Adrian's voice, low and commanding, from beside me. "The sub-weir chamber," she choked out, "under the old North Pier. It's the financial core, the real one." A data burst hit Priam's console. It was massive. "I'm getting it," he yelled. "The infrastructure, the accounts, it's all here." He stopped. "It's encrypted, a quantum lock. It needs the hardware key, the one in the weir. Delia, it's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," she cried. "It's Jack's Red. He's waiting for you. She's sacrificing him to protect the key." Adrian was already pulling his vest back on. "Kane, take a 4-man team. Hit the weir, hard and fast. Get that key." "No," I said. Everyone stopped. "It's the wrong move," I said, my heart hammering. "Seraphine is expecting a team. She's expecting a firefight. She's not expecting us. She's not expecting the boss. And she's not expecting the waitress. She's underestimating us. She thinks you're still the boy. And she thinks I'm just a prop. We go. Just us. We walk in the front door while Kane's team makes noise at the back. We're the only 2 people she isn't factoring in." Adrian looked at me. The last trace of doubt in his eyes vanished, replaced by a trust that was more terrifying and more powerful than any weapon. "Or we win together," he said, finishing the thought from a lifetime ago. "Or we fall together." He nodded to Kane. "You're the distraction. Make noise. Priam, you're in command of the protocol. Keep the lights on." He looked at me and held out his hand. "Mina, let's go finish this." The sub-weir chamber was a concrete hell. A circular bunker buried beneath the harbor, humid and echoing with the sound of rushing water. It wasn't just damp, it was flooding. "The tide," Adrian said, his flashlight beam catching a high water mark on the curved concrete wall. "It's the storm surge. The sound, it's the harbor, coming in." "The door," I whispered, shining my own light on a heavy, steel-plated bulkhead. A complex digital terminal was set beside it. It's a time lock. She's not just guarding the data, she's flooding the chamber. It's a fail-safe. A sheet of frigid black water washed over my boots, rising past my ankles. "How long?" Adrian asked, his voice calm. 10 minutes, maybe 12, and I said, my fingers already flying over the terminal. It wasn't a simple keypad, it was a network bypass. I have to reroute the lock. The water was at our shins now. It was shockingly cold, and the roar of the incoming tide was deafening. I was shaking, my fingers fumbling on the interface. "Mina?" "I'm working," I snapped, my panic rising. "I just need a minute." "Mina." His hands clamped down on my shoulders. He physically turned me away from the lock, forcing me to face him. The water was at our knees, swirling, powerful. "There's no time. Adrian, I yelled over the roar. "I need to say this," he yelled back, his grip iron, his eyes locked on mine. "Before the timer runs out, before the fight, I need you to know. Adrian, don't... I love you." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a confession. It was a statement of fact, a foundation. It was the anchor. And this time, it wasn't sinking the ship. It was holding it in the storm. All the fear, all the cold, all the noise, it just vanished. There was nothing in the universe but his eyes. My hands were shaking, freezing and wet, but I lifted them, cupping his face. "I love you too," I whispered. I pulled his head down and kissed him. It was hard, fast, and desperate. A kiss that tasted of salt and adrenaline and absolute, terrifying certainty. I broke it and spun back to the panel, my mind suddenly perfectly clear. Okay, now I can work. My fingers weren't shaking. They moved with the precision of a surgeon. Click, whir, thunk. The light on the panel turned from red to green. Got it. With a pneumatic hiss, the heavy steel door slid open. Inside, on a dry pedestal, was a small, waterproof case. I grabbed it, ripped it open, and held up the slim, dark metal hardware key. "I have it," I screamed in triumph. "Mina, behind you." Adrian's voice was a roar of pure terror. I spun around. It was hovering in the black, submerged tunnel behind the data room. It wasn't the one from Pier K. This was something else. Sleeker, smaller, deadlier. Its single red optical sensor glowed like the eye of a demon. A tinny, metallic voice crackled from a speaker on its chassis. Seraphine's voice. "You really are a clever girl, but I always have a contingency." The drone's weapon arm snapped open, a single, gleaming micro-injection needle aimed right at my heart. Checkmate, girl. My heart, which had been hammering, just stopped. The red eye of the drone stared at me from the black, swirling water. It was a snake in a mechanical shell. Seraphine's voice, tinny and triumphant from its speaker. Checkmate, girl. I was holding the key. I had won, and I was about to die. I braced for the sound, the that had destroyed the milk jug, the one that should have hit Adrian at the cafe. But it didn't come. Instead, a roar. "Mina, down!" It wasn't a warning. It was a physical act. Adrian launched himself. Not at me, not at the drone, but at the concrete wall to my right. He ripped something heavy and square from its mountings, an old, yellowed plexiglass safety shield from a high-voltage junction box that had been submerged for years. He moved in a blur, faster than I'd ever seen him move. He didn't just shield me, he became the shield. PFFT, the micro needle, fired with pneumatic force, slammed into the center of the plexiglass. It didn't break. It shattered. The plastic spider webbing from the impact point, a tiny puff of chemical smoke sizzling on the surface. Adrian grunted, the impact throwing him back against me. We both stumbled, the cold water rising to our waists. "It's reloading," he yelled, keeping the cracked shield between me and the drone. "Its sensor is locked on you." "Then unlock it," I shouted back. My brain was rebooting. The fear was gone, replaced by the ice-cold calm of the stage manager. This was a technical problem. "Keep it busy," I yelled. I scrambled past him, wading deeper into the chamber. The water now a heavy, freezing weight. I saw it an emergency maintenance locker, its door rusted open. Inside, a heavy-duty, battery-powered sodium lamp, an ugly, orange emergency light, and a small, cracked signal mirror. "Hey!" I screamed at the drone, my voice echoing off the concrete. "You want a target, you want me." The drone's red eye swiveled, leaving Adrian fixing on me. Its arm was retracting, a new needle sliding into place. "Catch the light!" I flicked the sodium lamp on. A hideous, blinding orange light flooded the chamber. I angled the mirror, catching the beam, focusing it. It was a follow spot, my follow spot. I blasted the concentrated orange light directly into the drone's red optical sensor. The effect was instantaneous. The machine spazzed. Its sensor, designed for low-light thermal and IR, was completely overloaded. It was like staring into the sun. It fired, blind, its needle ricocheting wildly off the concrete ceiling. It spun in the water, confused. Its targeting logic shattered, locked onto the false signal from my mirror. It was still dangerous. It was still armed. A sudden, sharp hiss echoed from the tunnel entrance. A small, gray canister flew past my head, landing in the water directly beside the flailing drone. It didn't explode, it ruptured. A massive cloud of thick, white, cold fog erupted from the canister, instantly blanketing the surface of the water in a sub-zero cloud, a cold smoke grenade. The drone, its optical sensor already scrambled, now lost its thermal imaging. It was blind in every spectrum. It defaulted to its last fail-safe return to user, but it was disoriented. It lifted 2 feet out of the water, flew directly into the curved concrete wall with a sickening crunch, and died. Its red eye flickered and went dark. Kane waded into the chamber, his face grim, his weapon still lowered. "You two make a lot of noise." "It's over," Adrian breathed, lowering the ruined shield. Not quite. A new light snapped on from the tunnel, a bright, clean, white LED. Seraphine D'Ambro stood there, flanked by 2 new guards I didn't recognize. She was perfectly dry, and she was holding a short, elegant, matte black firearm, aimed not at me, but steady as a rock, at Adrian's heart. "The games are done. Adrian," she said. Her voice was calm, maternal. "You've cost me a great deal of money tonight, but I am a businesswoman. I will cut my losses. Give me the key. We'll call it a severance package." Adrian shielded me behind him. Kane raised his weapon, a tense standoff in the rising water. "It doesn't end this way," Seraphine, Adrian said. "It really does," she replied, her finger tightening on the trigger. "You've paid your debt by showing up. Now, give me the key." "No." The voice was thin, watery, broken. A shape stumbled out of the darkness behind Seraphine. Delia. She was soaked. Her hands no longer bound. She was holding a heavy, rusted piece of rebar, holding it like a baseball bat. "He's my son," Delia choked out. "He's my son." Seraphine heard her, tried to turn, but she was too late. "I choose my son," Delia screamed, and she swung the rebar with all the force of a desperate mother, shattering Seraphine's kneecap. Seraphine didn't scream. She hissed, collapsing. The gun clattered into the water. Delia was on her, a specter of pure rage, raising the rebar again. "Delia, no!" Adrian yelled. "Don't, it's over. Don't become her." Kane's men were suddenly everywhere, swarming the tunnel, cuffing the 2 stunned guards. Delia froze, the rebar high, then let it fall with a splash. She collapsed, sobbing, into the filthy water. My earpiece, which I'd thought was dead, exploded with sound. Mina, the key, I've got a signal. Delia's data burst, just reopened the port. I need the hardware key now. Priam. I looked at the key. Still clutched in my hand, I scrambled to my tablet, which I'd left on a dry concrete ledge. I jammed the key into the waterproof access port. "I'm in," I yelled. "It's working," Priam screamed in my ear, his voice giddy with triumph. "The quantum lock is dissolving. Mina, Adrian, it's the real ledger, the real one. Every offshore account, every payment to the MSD, every DUC bribe. It's a kill shot." I looked at the tablet's screen. The Lighthouse Protocol feed was still live. "Push it, Priam," I said, my voice cold. "Push it all." Pushing," he yelled, "to every news server, every federal database. It's out, it's done. They're finished. Northlight is done." On the screen, I watched live as the DUC commissioner, who was in the middle of a frantic press conference on Pier K, looked at his phone. His face went from confusion to panic to ashen white horror. He knew. Everyone knew. It was over. Adrian walked through the water to where Kane was hauling Seraphine to her feet. Her face was a mask of pure, reptilian hatred. "You should have let me die under that steel beam, boy," she spat. Adrian looked at her, and all the fear, all the debt was gone. He just looked tired. "You saved my life, Seraphine," he said, his voice quiet. "That was the truth. You gave me 15 years I shouldn't have had. I owed you 1 life." He looked at Kane. "Let her go." Kane froze. "Boss?" "Let her go," Adrian commanded. "The debt is paid. I am repaying the life you gave me with the one I am giving you right now." He stepped closer to her. "But this is the last one. Walk out of this city. Walk out of this port. If I ever see you again, if I ever even hear the name Caldera Circle, I will not be the boy you saved. I will be the man who ends you. Now, go." Cain, understanding, released her. Seraphine stared at Adrian, her mind unable to process the mercy. It was a language she didn't speak. She limped, turning her back, and disappeared into the tunnel. The silence that fell was profound. The roaring of the water was the only sound, and then it lessened. "The tide," I whispered, slumping against the concrete wall, my legs finally giving out. "It's turning. The water is going out." I looked down at my hand. It was bleeding, a long, shallow cut across my palm. The mirror, I must have cut it on the mirror. Adrian was at my side in a second. He didn't try to pull me up. He knelt in the knee-deep, filthy water, taking my bleeding hand in his. He examined the cut, his touch impossibly gentle. He looked up at me, the adrenaline draining from his face, leaving only a bone-deep relief that mirrored my own. He smiled, a real, unguarded, tired smile. "Just a scratch," he said. We walked out of the sub-weir chamber, hand in hand into the first light of a clean, new morning. The storm had broken. The sky was a pale, clear gray. My tablet buzzed, a message from Priam. "Look at the lighthouse." Across the harbor, the beam of the Aureate Lighthouse Club was still sweeping. But Priam had done one last thing. He'd hacked the gobo. It was no longer projecting sponsor logos. It was projecting a single, simple, stylized image onto the clouds. A rising sun. 1 month later, the Orpheum Theater was no longer derelict. Its lobby was clean, the brass polished, on the stage, under a warm, simple light. Adrian stood at a podium, looking not like a boss, but like a citizen. "I'm proud to announce," he said, his voice ringing with a new, open confidence, "the official launch of the Harbor Light Community Theater program." I watched from the back of the house, my hands on the brand-new lighting console, which would be impossible without the vision and leadership of our new technical director and chief lighting designer, Miss Mina Paloma. I smiled and brought up Q2. The lights washed the stage in a hopeful, amber gold. In the front row, I saw Delia. She looked 10 years younger. Her son sat next to her, his arm around her. He was safe. Near the aisle, looking incredibly awkward in a new suit, was Cain. His name badge read Director of Community Security. He caught my eye and gave me a single, respectful nod. Later that night, the theater was empty. The ghost light was on, its single bulb glowing on the center of the stage. I was in the booth, running diagnostics, when the door opened. It was Adrian. He was holding 2 paper cups. He didn't speak. He just came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, pulling my back against his chest. I leaned my head back, resting it on his shoulder. We stood there for a long time, just breathing, watching the empty, promising stage. It was a new kind of quiet, a settled, earned peace. He lifted one of the cups. I saw the steam. Ginger. "Your throat," he murmured. "You were calling cues all day." I smiled. Taking the warm cup, I turned in his arms, our bodies still pressed close. I lifted the cup, holding it up to his lips. "Drink this now," I whispered. "Trust me." He laughed, a low, warm sound that vibrated through my whole body. He took the cup, his hand covering mine, his eyes holding a universe of love and respect. "This time, Ma," he said, "I trust you. No conditions." Thank you so much for listening to our story. We're so grateful to have you here with us. We'd love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment below and let's all connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that subscribe button for Mafia Boss Stories. Give this video a like, and if you really want to support the channel, press that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people. We'll see you in the next one.